Jekyll Island, November 1910. 7 bankers meeting in secret to create America's central bank. We just can't call it that.
The 1907 panic nearly destroyed us. Banks failed, fortunes vanished.
We want to control America's money supply, create booms, trigger busts, and profit from both. And how will we do that?
We'll create money from nothing, loan it to the government, and charge interest. Legal counterfeiting, my friends.
But there's a cost. Every dollar we print steals value from existing dollars. It's a hidden tax that flows directly to us.
And it gets worse. If we ever get off the gold standard, governments can print money for wars. Endless wars become possible and profitable.
Since Americans hate central banks, we'll call it the Federal Reserve. Sounds governmental, doesn't it? It's not.
The president will appoint board members, but we'll pick who he appoints. We'll have 12 regional banks. Looks decentralized, democratic even, but New York banks control them all. That's us.
You're probably wondering how we're going to get this through Congress.
December 23rd, 1913. Most of Congress home for Christmas. Perfect timing for passing unpopular legislation. I'll publicly oppose our own bill in Congress. They'll pass it thinking they beat Wall Street. We'll fund university chairs, write the textbooks. They'll teach our system as economic science. Beautiful. Every American born after this will inherit debt on money we created from nothing. Generational servitude. The Federal Reserve. Not federal, no reserves. But everyone will think it's their government protecting them.
Good afternoon.
That's right. Take the Fed out of your life. What do you think about that? I'll have to play that again at the end of the show. I know so many people aren't here with us first thing in the morning, probably because I'm pretty erratic with my crazy morning schedule. I think of Vic Faust every morning when I'm running late. He would be like, let's get to it. You know, obviously the professional that he is wanting to start on time, as I should be. But I keep having problems in the morning. Good morning. I'm Tabitha Hassell with Tabs on Tap. Good morning, Karen, on the comment line. I'll tell you, I think my camera was hacked. I'm not sure, but I think I was out last night. My family and I, we all went to my son, my mom, my brother, my niece. We all went out to Carlisle Lake. If you're familiar with Carlisle Lake, by the way, I don't like Carlisle Lake. I think it's dirty and gross. But my son wanted to go check out, and my brother, this camping area. So we ran out there, and there was a restaurant out there. It used to be called Swamp Tales. Now it's called Swamp Town. I think they had some kind of a restaurant makeover with bar rescue a year or so ago. And it's a fantastic place, by the way. It's probably the only restaurant we've all been to where everyone liked everything they had. There were no complaints about the food. So if you have the opportunity, definitely go out and check out Swamp Town there in Carlisle, Illinois. But either way, I got home. Things were a mess. I'm telling you, things were a mess. Good morning, Rob. Good morning, Karen. I came home to one less chicken. I don't know what happened, but my coop was attacked. Today is going to be a different story. I'm putting a better camera out there in a different angle because I don't understand what keeps opening the door to the coop. It makes no sense at all. So I've got to go outside today and figure that out. And I had a chicken that was not doing well. She was really sick. I'm not really sure why, why she was sick. Chickens, you don't really take them to the vet. I guess you could. Most people don't. And that is the one they got, I'm guessing, because she was the weakest link. And a terrible situation. I was really upset about it. Good morning, Linda. But in the middle of the night last night, I heard a noise. I'm like, what in the world is that noise? It was like a mechanical type noise. And I went in the other room. And, this is so strange. The room was dark and I was looking around and I saw a light. I'm like, I know there's not normally a light there. What is that light? So I turned the light on and went in and my camera was on. It was the strangest thing, the camera here for the show. Now, and it has I don't know what the proper term for it is, but the camera moves. It's on a swivel. And if I wanted to, I could turn the camera on And let's say if I walked around the room, the camera would follow me around the room. Or if I was outside and I had my camera set up on a tripod like it is now, let's say, and I was gardening, it would follow me back and forth across the yard. Well, the camera was moving, and I've never put it in the mode to move. I think they call it the cameraman mode. And so I don't know if my camera was hacked. I don't know what was going on. The laptop was closed. There wasn't anything to see, other than the flag behind me and some blank walls, but it was really weird. That's never happened before, ever. And then this morning, so I unplugged it because I thought, I don't know what's happening. I'm too tired to look at it. And this morning, I had a hard time getting the camera restarted. So I was running a couple minutes late. Good morning, Sherry. Good morning, Linda. And so that is due to my lateness this morning. Lots of things that we need to talk about today outside of my personal problems with getting hacked and chickens and gardening issues, everything else I've got going on. Trust me, it's a lot. Just a reminder, there will be no show tomorrow. I have to get a CT scan tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. at St. Louis University, and I definitely will not be back on time. But we will be back on Friday, and I've got some really interesting things planned to talk about on Friday, by the way. There's a lot of new UFO information out there that I definitely want to talk about. We have the UAP hearings coming up supposedly soon. If they don't change those once again, there's supposed to be some new information released. It was like they said within 72 hours a day ago. So maybe today, maybe tomorrow. I want to hear what this new information is. Of course, we're still talking about that comet. Is it a comet? Approaching our Earth span here in the near future. I think it's 100 and some, maybe 112 days or 100 days, something like that. We'll talk about that. But more than anything, you guys have heard me talk before about that case in Las Vegas. I call it the modern day Roswell, just because it's such a well documented case. So many different people saw what took place in Las Vegas. Well, there's some new information on that case, and it's really strange. And it's about that family that after they experienced these beings that they assumed, we assume are aliens in their backyard, they've had a lot of paranormal activity, demonic activity taking place since then. And I thought that's really weird. I just got chills. I don't even like to think about it or talk about it. But we are going to talk about it on Friday, along with some other interesting things. So make sure if you're around to tune in on Friday. But today we got lots of stuff to talk about today, a little bit more relevant to everything that's going on. And something I thought was really funny is I don't watch Fox News, but I read news stories, of course, and they talk about Fox. And something that Fox News talked about yesterday, you probably already saw this. I thought this was absolutely hilarious. And in my line of work, I hire a lot of people. And I'll tell you what, I've experienced it myself, quite honestly. I've experienced a lot of issues with hiring people. You set up a lot of times I'm setting up telephone interviews as that first step in the interview process. And I can't tell you how many times I set up a telephone interview and the person doesn't answer. And then they call me back later. Oh, can we do it tomorrow? I was busy. Or they'll answer and I hear all this noise in the background and they're ordering food, or they're sitting in a Starbucks eating their breakfast or whatever. And I'm like, seriously, this is an actual interview. I talked to a guy one time. He's like, oh, sorry, I'm at the eye doctor appointment. I'm like, okay, we scheduled a telephone interview for today at 10 a.m., but you're at an eye doctor appointment. I'm like, come on. And it doesn't surprise me at all. And so when I saw this stuff on Fox News, I'm like, yep, I totally get it. Good morning, Kevin. Gen Z in the workplace. This is the story of my life when it comes to hiring. It says right here, Gen Z. 77% of Gen Zers admitted to bringing a parent to a job interview. I am not surprised by that at all because I think of Gen Z as being the continuously coddled part of our new society. 53% of Gen Z parents spoke with a hiring manager on their behalf. That happened to me one time, not that long ago. I had an interview set up with a young girl and a young female, and her mother contacted me to tell me that she had other plans that morning and was going to have to reschedule. I'm like, seriously? Why would you have your mother call me? Makes no sense at all. And also about Gen Zers, 73% of Gen Z parents helped complete work assignments. Well, I think that answers a lot of questions, doesn't it? A lot of questions. 45% of Gen Zers regularly have a parent talk to their current manager. I mean, I don't know what you guys do, what your line of work is, but can you imagine one of your employees' parents calling you to talk about an issue that their child has at work? Completely unacceptable. People have to grow up. They have to grow up. I've seriously thought about having a separate show altogether about employment tips, what to do, what not to do, what to put on a resume, what not to put on a resume. I think last year, gosh, I don't know. If I had to guess all the people I hired, it was hundreds of people, hundreds of people. This year, hundreds of people. And I'll tell you, it's insane to me. It is absolutely insane. Some of the things I come across, I think it would be a really funny show to put together sometime. Wouldn't make a very good long-term show, but there's some funny stuff going on out there. And I've learned, with the new there's a lot of good young folks out there. There really are tons of good young folks, but it is not like it used to be. It is definitely not like it used to be. Some of the things and some of the people tell me when I'm talking to them, and again, this is an initial telephone screening. They say the craziest things, and I'm like, why are you telling me this? Why are you saying these things? It makes no sense at all. I have no idea who's coaching these people, or I guess maybe no one's coaching. And a story for another day, but these young folks, they've even changed sports. I know a lot of athletes, professional athletes, and in every category. And I have talked to them all over time about Gen Z and some of these younger people entering into professional sports teams. And I'll tell you, it's changing everything. I think you guys saw how at one point, it changed. Certainly, it's changed hockey, it's changed baseball, it's changed football. It has changed everything because this is a group of kids who are coddled. They grew up being coddled and they just cannot handle constructive criticism. They can't handle competition. It's a very scary place out there. Good morning, Kim. Lori, not sure what the cutoff is for Gen Z, but I have a 21 and 23-year-old. I think they would cut off their left pinky before they let me call their professor or employer. Exactly, Lori. And I would hope to say the same thing about, my own son. But I'll tell you, there are some kids out there with some real problems who have been coddled and handled like toddlers their entire life. And now these kids are, coming into the workforce and they're emotional and they don't deal well, with managers or other employees. I grew up in the tough times. I call it the tough times. Back in the day, I've been self-employed for a really long time now, but back in the day when I was younger and I worked at a company, I dealt with all kinds of craziness. I really did. There was a time when I worked, sorry, my hair is all over my face. I worked at an appliance parts company. I was the only female. As a matter of fact, I was the first female ever to work in the appliance parts division of this company, which was a really big honor for me at the time. I was very young. And I really liked, I helped people determine what was wrong with their appliance and then help them find the correct parts that they needed to fix it. But I'll tell you, it was a time when some of the men hated me. They didn't want me to work in their department. Some of them made sexual jokes and innuendos, which I laughed at. I've got a good sense of humor as well. I wasn't offended. I didn't complain or cry about it. And I certainly didn't file any HR reports over some jokes, with some sexual, innuendos. I thought it was funny, as us women did and do at the time. And, there were other times when, I didn't get along with coworkers. There was a couple times, there was one company I worked at when I was really young where I only got along with a couple people. And I'm one of those people, I get along with everyone. And a couple of these women were flat out mean to me. They were older women. They did not like me at all. But you know what? I went into work every day. I did my job. I just ignored them. But these days when that happens, people go into the workplace and they cry. I always think there's no crying. There's no place in the workforce for crying. There's people who go to work these days. I kid you not. And something happens and they're in the bathroom crying and you can't get them out of the bathroom to go back and do their job. or we have people who get upset over something somebody says and they just storm out of the office and they say, oh, I had to leave because I just couldn't handle how that person felt about me and the things they said. I always feel like saying man up. I think I need to wear a shirt that just says man up all the time. And being out there, being an employer, interviewing as many people as I do, I'm telling you, it's a scary world out there, a very scary world out there. Robert, good morning. Oh, good morning, Mary. You haven't missed anything. Just Mary says she's late. Just me rattling on about a bunch of nonsense, like most mornings. But I had to throw that in there about Gen Z because I thought it was absolutely hilarious that Fox posted all of that information about Gen Z. I'm so glad I grew up in the 80s. I really am. I couldn't begin to tell you how thankful I am to have grown up in the 80s, not only because of the music, but also just because were we were pretty darn tough for our ages, weren't we? Considering what we see now. Some other things I want to talk about: RFK Jr. We've talked about him so much in the past, and I have always said I feel like he's flying under the radar. He doesn't get as much attention as he deserves. Now he's getting the wrong kind of attention, but he's done so many fantastic things between tackling vaccines, talking about autism, talking about the ingredients in these different types of vaccines. And he's not anti vaccine, he is anti vaccine we don't need, or anti vaccine that has harmful ingredients in it. He has taken dyes out of food. He's made some of these restaurants have tallow, beef tallow, instead of seed oils. There's so many fantastic things he's done. And I know I've said it numerous times that I think he is the number one best part of the Trump administration outside of Donald Trump himself. Well, it's taken a while. What month is this? September. It's taken a while, but Democrats finally started paying attention. And I'm going to tell you why they started paying attention. Democrats finally started paying attention. And now all of a sudden, the Democrats have put together a $2 million campaign to get RFK Jr. fired. They want him out. They want him out. Kimberly says we were the feral generation. That's right, Kimberly. The best generation, the best. I think about that sometimes. Do younger kids think they are the best generation? I'm thinking, well, how could they possibly think that? But maybe because they don't know any better. But yeah, they want RFK Jr. out. And I really do think it's because they're taking a better look at old Billy Gates. Now, that's just my guess. I'm just guessing. I don't know that to be fact, but that is what I am thinking. Because all of a sudden, they want Bill Gates. They've got Bill Gates on that silver platter. They're talking about everything he's doing. I heard a story this morning which blew my mind and that didn't surprise me. It's something I hadn't heard before, but I heard that Bill Gates has plants, meaning people stationed at different parts of the government, whether they're interns or in other roles. And in all these different organizations, allegedly, Bill Gates has plants in these different organizations within the government, and they're there and they're paid well. And their goal is to influence decision makers so that we can put funding into Bill Gates' program, into his research, so that we have people who support chemtrails or bioengineered food or cellular-based food. And then I've been thinking for a long time, like, how does this stuff ever get passed? Why do we have cellular-based butter, cellular-based meat? It makes no sense. Why are people eating crickets, cricket flour or some of these other ridiculous things? How is it that we have so much chemicals and poison in our food? Did they take a perfectly good piece of steak and then decide to turn it into Beyond Meat? And all of a sudden, you've got this vegetarian chunk of meat that has nothing but chemicals. There's nothing in it that's good for you. There's no real food in it. You're eating a chemical patty instead of a real piece of beef because they're so worried, God forbid, the cows emit some greenhouse gases and destroy our ozone layer. It's just a bunch of ridiculous BS. And what it all comes down to, of course, is money. We're going to talk a lot about money today. It all comes down to money. So, of course, as soon as Donald Trump met with Bill Gates, as soon as RFK Jr. started tackling some of the subjects that are so important to Bill Gates, well, guess what? Now Democrats want him out. They want him out. And you're going to see it. They're going to come after him really hard because you know what? They want us to be poisoned, whether it's in our food, whether it's in our skies, and our water, and our dirt. They want us to be poisoned because you know what? A poisoned society makes a lot of money, right? A lot of money. And that's what everything in this world is about these days. It's all about the money. And I am sure at some point the pharmaceutical companies also spoke up and they said, hey, you guys are paying so much attention to Donald Trump and deportations and his cabinet picks. What about RFK Jr. over here, who's trying to make sure that some of these vaccinations are no longer being required? What about him, who's making our companies spend all this money, to change how we do things? Food companies stepping up, saying, you know what, it's very expensive to take food dyes out of our Fruit Loops. What are we going to do about this RFK Jr. who's trying to make people healthy again? Because God forbid, if people aren't diabetic, dying from cancer, sugar overload, thyroid problems, we're not going to make any money. And I'm telling you, it's taken a long time. It's taken a long time, but they're coming after him hard. And it'll be interesting to see what they pull out of the hat because we're going to see a lot more of that, I'm sure, in the coming days and coming weeks. Good morning, Troy. And good morning, Michelle. Mary says, we boomers think we are. Yes. Uh, and you know what, Mary, I've got a lot. I'm not a boomer, but I'll tell you what, I give a lot of credit to the boomers. No question about it. Robert, ladies, look into gel nails. I'm glad you mentioned that, Robert. Sorry. I've been coughing all morning. Hopefully, I'm not going to cough through the show. Gel nails. Over in the UK, they just banned gel nails. A lot of people go to the salon and you get your gel nails here. You can buy a gel. I keep saying gel nail polish and put that on your fingernails. Here in the US, that's something you can purchase. You can't do it anymore in the UK. Why? Because it causes reproductive problems. Reproductive problems. I'm going to play something for you just because I think it's funny. Speaking of that, now I'm going to tell you right now that I hope I can find it. This is a deep fake. Okay. It's a deep fake. This is not real. I wish it were real. This is not real. When I first saw this, I'm like, oh my God, that's everything I want to hear. But you know what? I love this video because even though it's a deep fake, it relates to all of the things we're talking about right now. You're going to love this too. Let me play this here for you.
Lopping off someone's ding-a-ling doesn't make them a woman, it makes them a eunuch. But you already knew that, right? So, as I was saying, George Soros, Bill Gates, and many more are pursuing a depopulation agenda. Very inappropriate. Poison in the food, fake medicine, endocrine disruptors, psych meds, and mass immigration. They want to turn your kids gay, retarded, or both. David Hogg, Harry Sisson, and that one fat chick are the prototypes. Very off-putting. I don't often say the word yuck, but I think it fits here. Conspiracy theories, for the most part, are simply spoiler alerts. Alex Jones, paragon of truth and justice, has been saying these sorts of things for years, and it's high time we start paying attention.
That's a deep fake. It's not real. It's not real. But I could see Donald Trump saying these things. When I first saw that video, I'm like, oh my God, he's finally telling the truth we all want to hear. Then I'm like, oh, it's a deep fake. It's not real. But isn't that a fantastic video? I absolutely love it. But it's also scary because it goes to show that looked like Donald Trump. It sounds like Donald Trump. It's a deep fake. How do you even know what is real anymore? Quite honestly, how do you even know what's real? I got some bright ideas from it though. I'm like, man, I could maybe not be here if I can't do a show. I could be anywhere doing like a little deep fake of myself, like I'm on the show. I mean, there's so many different crazy things you can do right now. Mary says, why is high fructose corn syrup and ice cream, hot dogs, can of chili beans? It's disgusting. Yes, it is. And Mary, I have been doing my best to not buy anything with high fructose corn syrup. I've been doing my best because it will kill you. It will literally kill you. Kimberly says they won't ban gel in the US because they want women to have reproductive problems. Yes, absolutely correct. They absolutely do. They want, you know why? They want to tank the white population. We'll talk about that another day, but that's what it's about, is they want to tank the white population. Mary says, get rid of plugins and endocrine disruptors. My friend's granddaughter got seizures from them. Oh, are you talking, Mary? Are you talking about the plugins like Glade plugins? I know they're very harmful to animals. Your pets, cats, dogs can be poisoned by those plugins. They can be poisoned by Swiffer wet jet things that you use on your floors. They can be poisoned by those misters that spray out, those pretty smells. And I believe, and I do believe this to be true, is I used to use a lot of wax melts. And I noticed that every time I used wax melts, I got like a bad, stuffy, sinus infection. So I stopped using wax melts, and it did help a lot because they are putting those chemicals into the air that we breathe. Candles. A lot of people think that when you burn candles, and I love candles, I really do. I love candles. But when you burn candles, that it puts and releases all these chemicals. I'm actually getting ready to make some chemicals. Sorry, I've got to start putting some hairspray on because my hair like flies all over my face. I've got a fan on back there, and it's like my hair is just going everywhere. Uh, I'm going to make my own candles with some ingredients that are not harmful to the environment. They're not harmful to you. That's something I'm working on. I've bought everything. I've just got to actually take the time out to sit down and make these candles because I love candles. I hate the idea of not being able to burn a candle, but I also want to make sure that the candles I burn are not filling my home with chemicals. And we'll talk more about that another day also. Robert, have your AI twin do the show for you when you're away. I wish, like tomorrow, when I'm going to be laying on that CT scan machine, I could be using my deep fake to do the show. That would be nice. Hopefully, though, it'll be Colonel Joe Adams or Robert. You come on. You can be a host for the day when I'm not in. I'd be happy to have you. And let's see here. I know I missed some comments. Nancy, he's a snake. You got that right. Jay, not that they are saying dogs. Now they are saying dogs are like cows and bad for the environment because of methane. Of course, they don't want you to have any pets. They think pets are for eating, right? That's what they think. Lobbyists. Yep, it is the lobbyists. Of course, Bill Gates probably does control a lot of lobbyists, but he also is putting these people into different positions as assistants, as advisors, and different types of things. And it's insane how much he's probably infiltrated our government. But Donald Trump and his administration, they're going to do their best to get rid of all of Bill Gates' lobbyists, all of Bill Gates' plants in these different sectors, so that we can actually make some good decisions without the influence of Billy Gates' money. That's for sure. And I probably missed some other comments. Let's see here. Mary says, if I want some smell in the air, I use essential oils and a diffuser mist. Exactly. And I know when I start making my candles, I'm getting some really good essential oils I'm going to put into the candles to make them smell really good. So I want to throw that in there. I love that deep fake, but I've got some video of Trump talking also because did you see, of course, that they've released, what is it, 32,000 pages? I think it was 32,000 of the Epstein files. Well, do you remember? And I'm going to tell you right now, I have not read through those Epstein files. I started to, and as a matter of fact, I have a copy of one here. Let's see here. Here you go. Here's the Epstein files. That's what they look like. Completely redacted. Anything you want to see this good is completely redacted. It's kind of funny because Anna Paulina Luna said, oh, there's names. You're going to see names. I didn't see any names in what little I looked through. And, Representative Nancy Mace, I'm not going to play the video, but there is a video of her coming out of the courtroom. She had listened to testimony of Epstein victims. She came out of the courtroom in tears. She didn't even want to talk to anyone. Her face was red. It was very clear that she had been, probably sobbing uncontrollably inside the room. She was in rough shape. And who knows what all she heard. But the one thing that we are hearing out of everything that's going on with the Epstein files and the new releases is that it's much deeper than what we ever expected. And I don't know, maybe much deeper than some people expected. I don't think it's deeper than what we expected because we expected it to be exactly what it is. And allegedly, there are several governments involved that Epstein was. And it's funny because Ghislaine Maxwell just said recently that he was not working. He was not an intelligence asset. He was not working for any governments. Well, now we find out no, that's not true. He was actually working for several governments. He had people in different areas, just like Bill Gates, all over the, White House and different administrations. He was definitely an intelligence asset. No surprise there. Some of the revelations that came out was that at one point, he was on a work release program. So he was able to leave during the day, come back in the evening. And during that time, he was still victimizing young women. It's crazy. And then there's also, excuse me, remember how we all saw that video of Epstein's cell? And everybody was focusing on that door, up close to the camera on the right. And I said before, that's not his door. You can't even see his room on that camera. But what's crazy is there was 1 minute. Remember, this is how they try to trick us. There was 1 minute missing. Remember that? And they said, oh, that happens. The camera flickered. And they lie to us. They lie to us. I hope you realize they lie to us. And they told us there's 1 minute missing because the camera flickered. These things happen all the time. All the time. We did not take a minute of footage out. Oh no, they did. They did take a minute of footage out. I've got that minute of footage and I'm going to show it to you. And it is very relevant because of course, Epstein allegedly died at midnight, right? And in the prior video they showed us that was missing that minute, you have to look down to the floor. There was no camera by his room. So what you saw during the prior footage was that you saw guards escorting Epstein back to his cell. You saw them walk with Epstein towards his cell. And then a minute was missing. Everything was quiet. Nothing was going on. Then the next thing you know, he was found, right? Well, now that minute has been somehow magically recovered. And I'm going to show you that minute. And Sherry says the video is out showing the guard. That's exactly right. I'm going to show it to you. And there's no sound in this video, but I'm going to show this to you. And I want you to look very closely. You're going to look past the upstairs floor and look down under the banister. And it's a long 1 minute. I'm going to tell you right now, it's a long 1 minute. But this is the entire minute that was missing from the other footage. And at some point, if you're looking closely, you'll be able to see the allegedly 2 guards. It's hard to see going towards Epstein's room. Okay, so now we know there's more to the story. So I want to know why Bongino and Patel told us that nothing funny happened when in fact now with this 1 minute of footage, we see that something funny did actually happen. So let's take a look at this here. And it's a long minute. When I watch this, I'm like, this might be the longest minute I ever had. So look past the trash can, look down over the banister. And you'll see in a couple seconds here, you'll see, I heard it was 2 guards. It's really hard to tell that you'll see walk past and go towards Epstein's door. Again, like I said, it's a long minute when there's nothing going on. But I want to know, why did they take this minute of footage out? Why? Because they wanted us to believe that they were not involved. That's why. Any second, they should be coming out under the banister. You're going to see them. I don't want to forward it through because I want you to see the entire minute. There they go. See him? You can barely see him. See that? You can see the foot go by. To me, it just looks like 1 guard. But the official statement is that it's 2 guards. Or maybe I just didn't watch the last couple seconds, but I only saw 1 guard go that way. And how do we even know that's a guard? We can't even see who he is. We can see feet. That's all we saw was feet walking across. So they want to tell us that, okay, they want us to believe that Epstein did away himself. I got to be careful with my wording. And he unalived himself and nothing happened. Nobody was around his room during that time. So they took a minute of footage out thinking we wouldn't say, hey, the video skipped a minute. Where's that extra minute at? And you can't tell me that they just did that by accident. They omitted 1 minute, happens to be the 1 minute where you see allegedly a guard walking towards Epstein's room. We don't know that that's a guard. We have no idea. I have not yet myself seen video of any other angles. They're telling us there are no other angles. I find that also hard to believe because here we have one of the most important people we've had behind a jail cell, in a jail cell behind the wall, and we don't have a camera right on his door. I mean, to me, you think he would be housed somewhere where he would have cameras on him 24/7. I have heard of criminals who have committed lesser crimes that actually have cameras in their cell. Remember the Moscow, Idaho case? Brian Koberger, remember him? Well, there is footage in his cell. There's a camera in his cell. You can see him washing his hands. You can see him eating. You can see him laying on his bed. You can see him going to the bathroom. There is a camera inside of his cell. They watch him every moment of the day, but not Epstein. Why wasn't there a camera in his cell? Or if there was a camera in his cell, maybe they just don't want us to know. Maybe they're not showing us that footage. I don't believe that they don't have a camera in a cell unless they didn't put one in there intentionally because they knew what was going to happen. That's the only thing I can guess. Because I'll tell you, that footage we just showed, that 1 minute, you can't tell who was walking. You can't tell that that was a guard. Was it an assassin? We just don't know. We have no idea. But why did they take that minute out? Why did they withhold that before and try to tell us that it was a glitch in the system and that there was no minute of footage missing? And now all of a sudden, oh, well, here it is. We found it. The 1 minute they took out. But gee, nothing happened. Epstein unalived himself. There was nothing to this case. He was forlorn because he was going to prison for the rest of his life. And we took that minute out. Jeannie, good morning. Whatever happened to Gates' fake chickens? Well, they're still around from what I understand. And I'm thinking, Jeannie, what you're talking about is are you talking about the lab grown chickens where they grew these chickens? And this is the craziest thing. If you're talking about the same thing I am, I saw a video one time of these chickens. They were headless chickens and they were walking around and they were just like, they looked like they didn't have feathers. They just looked like a big chunk of meat, but they were able to move and to walk. They didn't have heads. And they didn't have chicken feet either. They just had legs. And there was a lot of talk about how those chickens, and that was long before we knew what cellular based meat was. And at that time, I remember seeing those videos. They said, oh, don't go to KFC or don't go to some of these big chicken places because they're using this chicken. And then years later, they came out with this thing where they're like, oh, cellular based meat. We're growing whole chickens using cellular based meat. And it's a fermentation process is what that is, where they add in, of course, blood and different nutrients and different things to create an animal. And there are a lot of people who believe that when you first start growing cellular-based meat, it looks like ground beef or ground chicken or something like that. And that's usually when it's harvested. But if you continue to allow it to grow, it will grow into big slabs of meat or big chunks. And some people think that there are ways they can grow it to where it can grow a whole animal, almost like cloning. It grows the whole animal. I don't know if that's true or not. And Jeannie, I'm not sure if that's what you're talking about. Good morning, Jason. So the Epstein files, I'm going to look back through the Epstein files as I can. I was pulling it up this morning. I was looking through it again, but like I just showed you guys, most of it looked like this. There was not a whole lot to see. Anytime I got to something that I thought would be good, it was all redacted. I know they said there's names there. I have yet to see those names. I'll continue combing through those files and see what we can reveal. But the main things that I was able to see is that Epstein absolutely was involved in several different governments. He absolutely was an asset and I think I'm less shocked about what I read about Epstein and the things he was doing. I'm less shocked about that. I think I've always known and have read victim testimony that the things he did to these women was horrific. I think we've all known that there's a lot of big names, including members of Congress. I've heard, now I don't have the names, I have heard that when it comes to the names of people that victimized some of these women, that it's a lot of members of Congress. I've heard that it's Republicans and Democrats in Congress that were involved with Epstein and who potentially attended these parties. So there's no question they didn't want this information to come out. Now, I don't know those names. I haven't seen those names. I've heard the names are in the files, but everything I've seen has been redacted. So I don't know. If you come up with some names, please let me know. But so far, I haven't gotten that far. Everything's been redacted. But I am told that those names cover many members in Congress, both Democrats and Republicans who were involved with Epstein. Now, how involved, what victims, I do not know. I expect after Nancy Mace's reaction, we're going to hear a lot more of the victim testimony. I think there's going to be a lot more that comes from the information that was released. I don't know if we'll ever truly have those names, the perpetrators. I just don't know. But I think a lot of us can guess. None of that surprises me. What does surprise me is the fact that as much as we love Donald Trump, as much as we love Kash Patel and Dan Bongino and everybody else involved, I still feel like they lied to us. I really do. I feel like they lied to us. I remember, and you guys do too, that day when Pam Bondi and they had their little binders out. What was it, phase one? And everybody's so excited, jumping up and down. Oh, we got to release the Epstein files. And it was a whole lot of nothing. It was information. As a matter of fact, I had more information and have released more information on one of my shows several years ago. I had the black book several years ago, as did many of you, unredacted. I still have the unredacted black book. And what they released to us was absolutely nothing. It was what we already knew, information that was released years ago. And then all of a sudden, everybody caught on to something happened. Something happened. Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, they weren't all excited about releasing nothing. They were all excited about releasing something. And then I don't know what happened, but then they were told that they could not release that information. I firmly believe they were told they could not release that information. And now we have to wonder, well, what information did they have? Who redacted it? Who held on to it? Why were they not really? And they were all made to look like fools. If you can recall, they looked like absolute fools. And of course even Donald Trump, as much as I love Donald Trump, as much as I love Donald Trump, even he antagonized us. Even he told us, forget about it. Don't think about the Epstein files. It's done. It's a done deal. Let it go. But we don't let it go, did we? We did not let it go. Why? It's because we're Christians, right? We're Christians. We believe in accountability. And we weren't seeing accountability. We elected, a lot of us, part of the reason why we elected Donald Trump is because we want accountability. And it doesn't matter whether it's Republicans in Congress or Democrats in Congress or big names, whether it's Trump himself. We want accountability. Now, it's not Trump. Trump's name is not listed, as harming any of these women, of course. He's only involved in this case because he knew Jeffrey Epstein socially, as did so many other people. But we wanted that accountability. We were not going to give up. And I think they finally realized we weren't going to let go of it. But they lied to us. And I think we have to acknowledge that the Trump administration, they lied to us. And with that release of the 1 minute of footage, which by the way, the Trump administration told us, they told us that there was nothing missing. Remember? They said it was a glitch. These things happen. There's no 1 minute missing, but yet there is 1 minute missing. Now we see what that 1 minute is. And now we have Bongino and we have Patel telling us, and they sat there and you could see the looks on their faces when they told us that they didn't believe it themselves. When they sat there and they looked at us in the eyes and told us that everything points to that Epstein unalived himself. There was no one else involved, no other shenanigans taking place. But gee, that 1 minute of video, now we see somebody walking towards a cell. I know I'm talking about it way too much, but it's important to me. Sherry says, power, sex, the rulers of the universe. You got that right. As always, Sherry. Sherry says, we might not like it, but it's nature. Men are bred to breed. Women are designed to bleed. I don't think I've ever heard that before. That's funny. Kimberly, even the journalists who received the binders were disappointed with nothing. Exactly. But I know they had something. I know they did have something. I know they did. Pam Bondi, I have a lot of respect for Pam Bondi. She said, I have these files on my desk right now, and I'm going to release these files. She was so excited about it. And you could see the looks on Patel and Bongino's faces when they told us all that, yes, it's true. Epstein unalived himself. Nothing else happened. But gee, they held out 1 minute of video, and all of a sudden we see that minute and somebody's walking towards the door. Come on now. See, what I get upset about is that we're not stupid. We're not stupid. You cannot trick us. We know every trick in the book, don't we? We have learned, we are conservatives. Some people call us MAGA. We are that because we are woke up to the fact that our government lies to us. So even if it's the Trump administration, I don't care what administration it is, if they lie to us, we know they've lied to us. And I hope that people talk about that a little bit more, because I want to know why Donald Trump, why the Trump administration lied to us. And I think they owe us some answers. Now, they might come out and say, well, we had to lie to you. It was for the national security of our country. We had to lie to you because we knew if we told you the truth, you would panic, you would act a certain way, blah, blah, blah. I don't find that acceptable, but at least I would understand why they lied to us, because they did. I want to know why Donald Trump told us to move on. There's nothing here to see. There's nothing. Well, there's a lot here to see, isn't there? There's a whole lot here to see. Some of the governments that Epstein was involved with, think about this. Remember how originally they were telling us it was what they called the honeypot? Remember that, what the honeypot was? And that was that Epstein, and Sherry, this goes to your point about men. And trust me, I love men, so I'm not downing men by saying this. But we know now, and it was alleged before, we were told that was wrong, that what Epstein would do is he would lure these different government officials, different whistleblowers, different people into meeting these young women. He would film them, and he would use that as leverage. But yes, he would, but he was giving it to other countries and other individuals to use as leverage. Now, we all know how the world works, right? We're not emotional Democrats. We know the truth and the reality of how the world works. So when we heard about this whole honeypot, they call it scam, we all probably knew it was true. We knew that they were probably using this video as leverage. But then we were told there was no video. Remember? They lied to us. The Trump administration lied to us. They told us there's no video. Pam Bondi herself sat there in front of a camera, looked us in the eye, and she said, the only video is of child pornography. There's nothing else there. That's not true, Pam Bondi. It is not true. And I believe she knows that's not true. In fact, there's a lot of video evidence, and that video evidence shows a lot of very important people on video with children, with young women. I've not heard anything yet about young men or young boys. I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case too, but I've not heard that yet. That probably was over on the Diddy side and not the Epstein side. But they lied to us, and to me, I want some answers, and I want to know why they lied to us. That is what I want to know more than anything. Nothing at all, nothing at all that Epstein did surprises me. None of this surprises me. The honeypot deal, I always believed it was probably true. The fact that he was involved in with these different countries for leverage, I never doubted it at all, regardless of the fact that they lied to us. Tammy, just makes you not trust them more. I know, and I hate that, Tammy, because you guys know I love Donald Trump. I spent weeks in Georgia, getting out the vote for Donald Trump, and being paid by Elon Musk, who I absolutely adore also. And I'll tell you, I don't change my mind about Donald Trump. I think if he lied to us, he did it with a purpose. There was a reason why didn't want us to know. I didn't like his tone when he lied to us. And I'm pretty sure Kash Patel and Dan Bongino are probably pretty disillusioned with everything. And I know I really do think that Andrew Bailey, Missouri Attorney General, of course, is being the co-deputy director of the FBI to take over for Bongino. I think Bongino said, I've had enough of this BS. I'm out of here. Find a way to get me out, because I don't want to sit here and lie to the American people because he was on the opposite side. Remember, he was on the opposite side where he told the American people the truth. He thought that he would come in and make a difference, but really he's just a paper pusher, and he's just told to lie to us. And I'm sure that's not what he got involved to do. And let's see here. Sherry, I think Trump is trying to ease the pain for the normies. We must trust the plan. We do have to trust the plan, but I still want some answers. I want some answers. And Sherry, they just tried taking out Giuliani. That was a weird situation, wasn't it, with Giuliani? For those who don't know, Giuliani, and I still haven't heard the full story, but somehow he got involved with a domestic dispute. And then I'm told, or what I read anyway, and again, I could be wrong on this because I didn't do a deep dive into it. But then he helped out this woman who had been in some type of domestic dispute, got the police involved. Then he left, was on the highway, and then somebody rear-ended him, and then he was seriously hurt in that accident. And you know that Giuliani knows everything. He knows everything. As the mayor of New York City, he knew everything there was to know. So don't think that that man won't talk if he has to. And yes, I absolutely do believe something was really fishy was going on with that situation. And let's see here. Sherry says Donald brings it all to light. Let's hope. And Sherry says, exact conversation I had this morning with Eddie. Why did Trump deny it? Now everyone is talking about it. Exactly. He should have. I wish that Trump just handled it differently. But see, here's the thing, and this is really why I like Donald Trump. And sorry, I've got to grab something over here. The reason why I like Donald Trump is because he's real. He doesn't have handlers. He doesn't have people doing his business for him. Now, if Donald Trump was Obama, he would have had a much smoother response because Obama doesn't speak for himself. His handlers speak for him. And of course, they're going to give a very smooth diplomatic response. Where Donald Trump is very different. Donald Trump speaks for himself. He thinks for himself. Statements he gives are given from the heart. And he didn't have a team of people to his side saying, okay, President Trump, this is how you need to phrase things. This is what you need to say, and this is how you need to handle it. He handled it in the best way he thought he could. And unfortunately, it was a misstep, in my opinion, that he could have and should have handled it differently. But I think all of us as humans can go back and look at things that we should have done differently, that we should have said differently, or handled a situation differently, because we don't have somebody standing over our shoulder, a team of people telling us what we should and shouldn't say. We speak from the heart, and that's what Donald Trump does too. And trust me, I have certainly said some dumb things myself, so I totally get it. Let's see here. Sherry said I read that. And I just want to make sure I don't miss anything. But yeah, Mr. Parnell, our entire government is compromised by foreign powers and elites. I was not surprised when they got caught in the lies. And it won't be the last time. It will not be the last time they're caught in lies. And I'm saying this from a place of being the happiest person on the planet because we have Donald Trump as our president, because we have his administration in place. The things that they're doing for this country are beyond amazing. And we're going to talk about some of those in just a minute. But, I'm thrilled to death we have Donald Trump. I wouldn't go back and change that for anything in the world to have Donald Trump as our president. But I do think, just like any other administration, they are going to lie to us because that's what the government does. They're meant to appease the people, to keep us calm, keep us working, keep us going, and they don't want to do anything to disrupt that. And for different reasons, not necessarily nefarious reasons, but it's all about money, isn't it? It's all about money. That's what it comes down to. It's all about money. And I played a video at the very beginning of the show. I'll play it at the end about the Federal Reserve and the central banks and so on. But it's all about money. And don't ever let yourself forget that. The situation with Venezuela, as a matter of fact, you probably saw Donald Trump's speech in the Oval Office. Some of the things, first of all, that he covered was that they were going to move the Space Command from Colorado, I believe, to Kentucky, which is going to employ a lot of people. I think that's a fantastic thing. He wanted to move it out of Colorado because, of course, they're a very liberal state. They vote very liberally, and he wants to make sure that Space Command is operated in a state that does not vote very liberally. So I completely understand that. And I'm very thankful that he moved it from Colorado to Kentucky. That I think that's a great plan. And that was one of the things he talked about. We're going to talk a minute about well, you know what? Let's talk about this first. Then we're going to go back to money because it's very important. Oh, was it Alabama, Brenda? If it was Alabama, then thank you for correcting me. Because I was thinking about that this morning. I'm like, I only watched part of the conference. I'm like, I don't really remember. So if it's Alabama, just as good, as long as it's out of Colorado. But one of the other funny things that came out of this, and we're going to move and talk about Venezuela, the cartels, and what's going on in Chicago, a little bit about China's big military parade. But first, I thought this was really weird, and I'm kind of curious about what your take. Now, thank you so much, Sherry, Huntsville, Alabama. Thank you to you guys who, if I get it wrong, you guys always get it right. So thank you. Mary says Rahab in the Bible lied to protect two spies, some being protected, I guess. Yeah, there's always somebody being protected, but it's always about money. And we're definitely going to talk about how it's all about money here in just a moment. You know, a lot of things have been coming out lately. You know, a lot of people have been talking about Donald Trump being sick, about him being dead. Obviously, he's not dead. And never did I think he was dead. Now, is he potentially having some health problems? I don't know. He's lost a lot of weight. Maybe that's good. Maybe he's trying to lose weight. Maybe it's because of an illness. Doesn't matter. His health is his business. As long as he's cognitive and he's able to make decisions, that's all that matters to me. Of course, I wish him well and I hope he's healthy. But as far as being the president, I just want him to be cognitively there so he can make some decisions and not have to rely on all these people taking advantage of us by using the auto pen. But one of the things that came out of this was pretty interesting. Sherry says, go to X and search the daughter that suicided, Huntsville, Alabama. She outed Space Force location. Oh, well, Sherry, you're way ahead of me. I had no idea. I'm going to go back and look for that because I did not know anything about that. That'll give us something to talk about too on Friday, outside of the UFO stuff I plan to talk about. Let's see here. I am looking for a video and I want to show you this because there's a lot of talk, and I'm sure you guys have heard or maybe even seen this video. You know, again, I'm not worried about people talking about Donald Trump being ill. Was he? I don't know. You know, I think the guy deserves a couple days off. Joe Biden, he took off over 100 days per year. He took off. He was not at the White House over 100 days per year during his term, and nobody said a darn word. Donald Trump, 2 days. Oh, everybody's all freaked out. But something I thought that came out was interesting is that did you hear the story and see the video about somebody throwing something out of the White House window? I'm going to show you the video. You may or may not have already seen it. And of course, when Donald Trump was questioned about it, he said, oh, that's got to be AI because the windows weigh 600 pounds. They're bulletproof glass. They're sealed. And I believe Donald Trump. You know, they are bulletproof glass. They are sealed. I'm sure they're extremely heavy, but I could swear that sometime in the past, I've seen White House windows open. Now, I think it was Peter Doocy who said, well, you know, could it possibly have been the area where they're doing a rehab? And Trump's like, nope, didn't happen. So I'm going to show you the video first of somebody throwing something out of the White House. And I'm going to show you Donald Trump's statement.
Got another one? Let me see. Yeah, let's say in that little outhouse
Somebody
on the end.
hanging out of the window.
Oh, somebody there, right? Right now, right? Oh, there you go. You got it? You zoomed in?
All right, now here's Donald Trump's statement.
There's a video that is circulating online now of the White House where a window is open to the residents upstairs, and somebody is throwing a big bag out the window. Have you seen this?
No, that's probably AI generated.
So,
Actually, you can't open the windows. You know why? They're all heavily armored and bulletproof.
So that's a fake video?
Well, it's got to be because I know every window up there. The last place I'd be doing it is that because there's cameras all over the place, right, including yours. No, but every window, I've never seen a window that's. In fact, my wife was complaining about it the other day. She said, "Love to have a little fresh air come in, but you can't. They're bulletproof." And number one, they're sealed, and number two, each window weighs about 600 pounds. You have to be pretty strong to open them up. No, that has.
Okay, they go on and talk a little bit more about it. what I want to know is who's making these videos. And quite honestly, if you make a deep fake video or an AI video of the White House, particularly when it comes to the security of the White House, don't you think they should track that person down and say, hey, that's going too far? If you're making a deep fake video or a video that is just funny or something irrelevant, that's one thing. We played a deep fake video earlier of Donald Trump. However, when you're talking about the security of the White House, that's a whole different story. And I absolutely believe Donald Trump in this instance because, we've all seen, I've seen the videos, you've seen the videos where you see Donald Trump himself standing in the window. And I know I have thought many times, like, why is he standing in the window? That just makes him an easy target. But he's not worried about it because it's bulletproof glass, 600-pound windows. Now, that doesn't mean that an airplane couldn't crash through or a missile or something along those lines, but the average everyday threat is not going to penetrate those windows or those walls. The White House is fortified specifically upstairs where the residence is. Now, the windows downstairs is a different story. I know I have seen those windows open downstairs. So I don't know what the deal is with that. But somebody said, let's see here. Sherry said that looks like the Tyler Perry fake White House, and it might be. And Sherry says she immediately knew it was fake, and people are so dumb. It's all over X. Yeah. I when I saw the video, I didn't even think about it being fortified and they couldn't open the windows and that but the first thing I thought was that there would be nothing to be throwing over. And if they were to throw something out, gee, what were they throwing out? A medical bag, drugs. Come on now. Everybody's watching the White House all the time. All the time. There's always people standing out there. There's always reporters, there's always civilian citizens. Everybody's watching the White House. Everybody's looking at those windows, hoping to get a glance of Trump. There are cameras on the White House windows 24/7, 24/7. And there is no way in a million years, if Trump, him or his administration wanted to do some funny business, they're not dumb enough to throw something out of the window. So I thought that was kind of funny, but it goes to show how hard they try, right? How hard they try. I'm not going to play the video, but we had that video of Tim Wall. Some of you probably saw it. That guy thinks he's so funny. He's such an idiot. Where he's talking about, oh well, we all wake up every day and expect to hear some news. He's like, well, not today, but maybe someday. And what he meant, and I think we all know what he meant, is that he was hoping to hear the news that Donald Trump had passed. And that, no, it didn't happen today, but someday. He doesn't hide the fact that he wishes that something would happen to Donald Trump. But that's how Democrats feel. Maybe not all Democrats. I should say maybe liberals and the people on the very far fringe left. That's how they feel. They hate Donald Trump so much. They hate us so much that they would love to see something happen to him or any one of us. Any one of us. And it's really terrifying because I'll tell you what, I'm no fan of Democrat policies. I'm no fan of Obama. I'm no fan of Biden or a whole lot of other people, on the Democrat side. Even, let's say, Rashida Tlaib, or whatever her name is, who has called for Hamas to rise up, and mobilize and attack our military members. And I don't even wish any harm on her. But yet they want every single one of us to be extinguished. It's absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. So we were talking about money, and I'm going to go back to talking about money because it's very important in what's going on today. It relates to what's going on in Chicago. It relates to what's going on in Venezuela. It's all about money. Good morning, Curtis. Happy to see you this morning. And yes, TDS is certainly a real illness. It's a mental illness, and it has taken over parts of our country, sadly, very sadly. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is what happened with Venezuela, because it's so funny because we just talked about this yesterday morning on the show. We were just talking about, I was just explaining how the reason why we have those 8 warships there is not because we want to attack Nicolas Maduro in the country of Venezuela. We have a mission, and that mission is to keep drugs out of America. Donald Trump is going to make this our utopia, drug-free, hopefully somewhere down the road. Maybe not in our lifetimes, but he's going to do his best. As we said yesterday morning, the drug dealers, the cartels, they have to try extra hard because our borders are closed. We are closed. There's a big no-go sign on the outside of our country that says you are not bringing your drugs or your trafficking into our country. So they're coming up with other means. And we know that these drugs are coming out of Venezuela. We know these drugs are coming out of the Caribbean. We know they're coming across our southern border in Mexico. Well, the southern border's closed. They're not very little is getting through the southern border at this time. There might be a couple folks that can sneak some stuff through, but there's nothing significant that's going to come through on our southern border. So we know that they're going to be coming up through the Caribbean. They're going to be coming up out of Venezuela with their drugs because it's a multi-billion-dollar business per week, not just in general. Per week, every week, these cartels make billions of dollars trafficking drugs primarily here to America. They come into America, they make their way up to Canada, they come from Canada sometimes and make their way down to the United States and so on. And so we're like, okay, the southern border's closed. We're going to send everything we have out into the Caribbean, out towards Venezuela, out into the ocean, because that's the only way they have to try to come in right now. It's so crazy that we just talked about this yesterday morning and then it happened. You know, we already talked about a big drug seize, one of the largest ever by the Coast Guard that took place last week. It was a street value of almost $500 million in various drugs, mostly cocaine, that they caught coming in a boat through the Caribbean. And we have those warships there because we are trying to protect our country. And from Venezuela and from Tren de Aragua, we deported a lot of these Tren de Aragua members, both back to as many as they would take, you know, back to Venezuela, to some other countries. But we know that in Venezuela, it continues to operate as Tren de Aragua. They continue the drug trade because guess what? It makes the government a lot of money. If you are a Tren de Aragua member and you're operating in the country of Venezuela, you know, I don't have to tell you, you know that money is going back to the government. Somebody pointed out to me yesterday that Maduro's not even an officially elected person. They weren't even allowed to have an election. You know, he's running that country, and you know that some of that cartel money is keeping him in office. And you know that every official in that country is profiting off of the drug trade. You know, they might want to look like, oh, we're fighting crime. We're trying to get rid of the gang members. We're putting them all in prisons and blah, blah, blah. But in fact, they're profiting off of these people in the drug trade. And so that is why we have those ships. And it's no coincidence that all of a sudden, gee, yesterday, a ship leaves Venezuela, makes its way down to the Caribbean, and they're bringing drugs here to the United States. And we, of course, target and obliterate their ship. I'm not sure if you've seen a video of that. I do have a video. It's only 20 seconds long, but I'm going to show it right here. And this is the ship being targeted and hit by our United States military, if it will play here. There we go. There's no sound. All members aboard killed. I don't know why my video is not playing right. Probably people flagging the show because I'm talking too much truth. All right. Well, that was a long 27 seconds because my video is not playing right. But either way, all members gone. They're gone, carrying drugs to the United States. And then, I don't know what's going on. I'm having problems all of a sudden. There we go. You know, this happens from time to time. We talk too much truth. They start flagging the show, then my buttons don't work. Um, so what happened here? You know, where do we go from here? Now, what I am told is that, of course, Venezuela took this very personally. They saw it as attack against their country, and they claim they're ready. Now, we already know they moved 15,000 troops to their border, and just in case we did have some type of an attack. Now we hear Iran has jumped in the mix, and Iran has given Venezuela some missile defense systems. They've given them some heavy artillery, some ships. So now we're probably going to see a little bit of an escalation. We're going to see Iran's military hardware coming into use. Now, I still don't expect anything big to come out of this. I really don't. I think that, we're doing the right thing. We're fighting the cartels, but the cartels are very powerful. And I think we're probably going to find out soon just how powerful the cartels are. And I consider it to be an actual war against the cartels. And I do expect that there's going to be more that comes out of it as far as cartels. I don't expect a war with Venezuela, the country, but we are absolutely in a war against the cartels. And we're going to see more of this activity because the cartels are desperate. They don't want to, if they run out of money, the cartels, they're not making billions of dollars a week. How are they going to pay all of these different governments? How are these governments going to continue to exist without the payment from the cartels? Because trust me, there's a lot of governments like Venezuela where the government only exists because of the cartel money. Mexico is one of those countries as well. So if they don't have their billions of dollars coming in from their drug money, they're going to become very desperate. Right now, the only way in is through the Caribbean. So they are going to do their best to get those shipments through. They're going to have to be smarter. And who knows, that might have been a decoy. There might have been a submarine at the same time, and they might have launched that ship as a decoy. We don't know, but hopefully we will find out. And speaking of money, another statement from Donald Trump was about Chicago, fighting crime in Chicago. And people want to say, well, why doesn't J.B. Pritzker, why doesn't Brandon Johnson want to eliminate crime in Chicago? So we're going to listen to Donald Trump's statement first, and I'm going to explain to you how that also comes back to money. And then we don't have much to talk about after that.
End up on Chicago, though?
Well, we're going in. I didn't say when. We're going in. When you lose, look, I have an obligation. This isn't a political thing. I have an obligation. When we lose, when 20 people are killed over the last 2.5 weeks, and 75 are shot with bullets. So let me tell you a little story about a place called D.C., District of Columbia, right here where we are. It's now a safe zone. We have no crime. It's in such great shape. You can go and actually walk with your children, your wife, your husband. You can walk right down the middle of the street. You're not going to be shot, Peter. You're safe.
Okay, well, we can only hope. Now, I saw a video of Pritzker, I'm not going to play it, where he's walking, he's talking to a reporter, and he said, oh, all cities have crime. It's going to happen. All cities with big populations are going to have crime. And he wants to know why Donald Trump isn't targeting Republican states that have cities with a much higher crime rate than Chicago. Now, Donald Trump's telling us, 70-something people were shot in the past 2 weeks. I mean, multiple, murders. Yes, there's a big problem in Chicago, no question about it. And trust me, we're going to go through Chicago. We're going to make it clean again, safe again. And then we're going to go on to the next city. But here's what we got to start asking ourselves. Again, it comes down to money. Because guess what? Gangs make a lot of money because they are also, dealing in the narcotics trade, in the trafficking, and so on. And what ends up happening, and I know you guys already know the path, that the drugs come into this country, whether it be from Mexico and our southern border, whether it be from the Caribbean, whether it comes from Canada, however the drugs enter our country, they make their way through these smaller gangs in your city. So it might be a small town gang, it might be a big town gang. There's a lot of folks that are part of that drug trafficking process. And then what happens is, let's say the bigger gangs in Chicago, they get a hold of the drugs, they cut the drugs, they divide them up, they give them out to their street people who are the people who actually sell the drugs. And solving crime in a city puts a lot of people out of work, a lot of people out of business. And you think, well, why does Brandon Johnson and J.B. Pritzker not want to solve crime? Why do they not want to fight against the gang members? Because a lot of the crime in Chicago is gangs. It's not all gangs, but a lot of it is gang activity. And just like the cartels, it's all connected. The gangs and the cartels are absolutely connected, and they don't want to solve it because of the money. That money that those gangs dealing drugs around the city, that's a lot of money. And with drugs, with prostitution comes violence. And I will bet you on my life that the majority of those shootings were over drugs, mostly, probably not prostitution so much, but drugs and prostitution go hand in hand. So I would say the majority of those shootings were drug related. So if you get rid of the drugs, you're not bringing drugs into the country, you're getting the criminals off the street. That's obviously going to solve a lot of problems. But a lot of that money, guess what happens? It turns, it's laundered, right? They sell the drugs get the drug dealers get the money back. They take their cut, they give the money to the cartels. Well, for the cartels to operate, the cartels, don't think the cartels don't operate in this country without some assistance from different folks in the government. They run the highways in parts of Arizona, and was they know better in Texas these days, but you go to parts of Arizona, there's signs up on the highway. The cartels run those highways. They have free reign in a lot of these border towns because we allow it to happen, because a lot of that money gets funneled to local governments. A lot of it gets funneled, believe it or not, to members of Congress. So don't think that the people in our government aren't profiting off of crime, off of drug cartels, and so on. So, of course, Democrats don't want crime to be solved because that's money that comes directly out of their pockets. If we stop the cartels, if we stop the gang activity, if we stop the drugs being sold, the only way to stop all of these shootings and killings is to stop the drugs. If we stop the drugs in our cities, then that's money that's not going back into the pockets of the enablers. We know it's happened. Remember, we listened to Oliver North's testimony many years ago. Nothing has changed since then. So that is exactly why J.B. Pritzker, that is exactly why Brandon Johnson do not want the crime to stop, because they know that means A, they're going to lose voters. B, because that's money not going. I'm not saying money's going into the pocket necessarily of Pritzker or of Brandon Johnson, but we know it's going into the pockets of Democrats and probably some Republicans as well, who allow the system to be enabled. And not to mention that, but here's where the kickbacks come in. Let's say in the city of Chicago, J.B. Pritzker can say, hey, I'm the governor of Chicago. We need X amount of dollars to hire more police officers. We need X amount of dollars to go buy more equipment for police officers. We need this money to go towards private security for certain areas. And then what ends up happening is they don't hire the police officers. They don't buy the equipment. They don't hire the private security. And that money gets funneled and it gets laundered and it ends up back in their own pockets. We know it happens in St. Louis. In St. Louis, it's a little more obvious. Cori Bush being caught, of course, with her own private security detail. We saw how that money was funneled and laundered. But it happens on a larger scale in cities like Chicago. So it's much more than J.B. Pritzker and Brandon Johnson not wanting the city streets to be safe. It's about money that comes out of their own pockets. And I could probably get in a lot of trouble for talking about that, but it is the truth. I think you can picture it in your head. All of the programs that are needed for a big city like Chicago to curb violence, to clean up the streets, when in fact that money just gets subverted into something else and ends up in their own pockets. People don't become millionaires and billionaires when they serve in the government for no reason, right? We talked about that yesterday with Ilhan Omar. And I said it kind of wrong yesterday. I was saying that she started out her position with $45,000, but I read that wrong. It was actually negative. She was $45,000 in the hole, negative $45,000. Now she worth $30 million. Now Pritzker, he's a billionaire, but his family owns, some different companies. So that's where some of his wealth comes from. But these people don't come into our government and gain all this money for nothing. It's because they get kickbacks. And how they get kickbacks is they subvert all of this money meant for different programs, and they ask for the funding, they get the funding, and then they never follow through. Instead, they just keep the money. Would be nice to be a government worker, wouldn't it? We'd all be living different lifestyles, wouldn't we? All right, guys, I am way over my time. As always, lots more to talk about. I'm going to play that video as I leave for the Federal Reserve. There was a couple other things I was going to show you today, but nothing important. But Friday, got a lot to talk about Friday. Tomorrow, again, I have to go and get my CT scan. Hopefully, we'll find out why I keep coughing. I was up all night coughing all morning, doing my best not to cough now. We'll get it figured out. But in the meantime, I will not be here tomorrow. I will be here on Friday. We got a lot to talk about Friday. And I'm particularly interested in talking about that case, like I said, in Las Vegas, because I know people keep telling me, and people have been telling me this for as far back as I can remember, that there's no such thing as an extraterrestrial. They're really just demonic forces. And I honestly have never believed that. I've always thought, no, I don't believe that. I really do believe in aliens and extraterrestrials, and I still probably do and will. But I think it's interesting that case in Las Vegas, that family has reported since they had that alien encounter, that they have demonic forces in their houses and some weird things going on. So we're going to talk about that on Friday. I can't wait to talk about it. Of course, I find that stuff extremely interesting. We're going to talk about UFOs and a lot as well. In the meantime, thanks guys for joining me. I do appreciate your support more than you know. I'm Tabitha Hassell with Tabs on Tap, and I'm going to play that little video about the Federal Reserve because I like it so much. I will see you all on Friday. Have a good day, everyone.
Jekyll Island, November 1910. 7 bankers meeting in secret to create America's central bank.
I'm going to try to play it.
We just can't call it that.
The 1907 panic nearly destroyed us. Banks failed, fortunes vanished.
We want to control America's money supply, create booms, trigger busts, and profit from both. And how will we do that?
We'll create money from nothing, loan it to the government, and charge interest. Legal counterfeiting, my friends.
But there's a cost. Every dollar we print steals value from existing dollars. It's a hidden tax that flows directly to us.
And it gets worse. If we ever get off the gold standard, governments can print money for wars. Endless wars become possible and profitable.
Since Americans hate central banks, we'll call it the Federal Reserve. Sounds governmental, doesn't it? It's not.
The president will appoint board members, but we'll pick who he appoints. We'll have 12 regional banks. Looks decentralized, democratic even, but New York banks control them all. That's us.
You're probably wondering how we're going to get this through Congress.
December 23rd, 1913. Most of Congress home for Christmas. Perfect timing for passing unpopular legislation. I'll publicly oppose our own bill in Congress. They'll pass it thinking they beat Wall Street. We'll fund university chairs, write the textbooks. They'll teach our system as economic science. Beautiful. Every American born after this will inherit debt on money we created from nothing. Generational servitude. The Federal Reserve. Not federal, no reserves. But everyone will think it's their government protecting them.
Good afternoon.